every Monday night at 6 p.m. I have my co-host with me this evening, and that's none other than Miss Shaquita Wynn.
Good evening, everyone.
Hey, we have a show that's going to pull at your heartstrings tonight. This is a show that's going to get up close and personal. We have special guests in the studio with us this evening. We have Miss Sharon Fletcher Jones. She's a life coach. She's an author. Just incredible, dynamic woman. She's going to talk about her book, but she's also going to talk about her life experience with her mom. We also have in the studio with us, and boy, I tell you, just give me chill bumps. Another personal friend that over the last 2 years, man, I tell you, with family together and children, Dr. Andrea Singh, that we just happen to have a simple conversation talking about dementia and Alzheimer's. And boy, you'd be amazed at how many lives is touched by this disease. You just never know. But I want to thank both of you for being here this evening and sharing your stories and not feeling it robbery to be here with us, and also just sharing with our audience this evening.
Thank you so much for having me. I can't tell you how important this is, not just to me personally, but to us as a people. We are, if you are 65 years old, then you are among the 14% of Black people at 65 who already have Alzheimer's versus the 10% of white people at 65.
Well, we're going to get into that a whole lot more, but I do want to dive into this a little bit more and tell a few things about you. Is that Portsmouth, Virginia native, living in Orlando?
Yes.
Miss Fletcher Jones wrote poetry as a preteen.
Yes.
I can't tell you I was doing that young. But also in the late 1980s, your series of articles about missing children inspired, basically became the catalyst and the beacon of light atop Mount Trashmore. Is that what it's called?
Yes, it was a dump in Virginia Beach, and it was only used as a landfill dump. And they, after my series of articles, erected a symbolic beacon of hope to shine the light on the missing children issue that Virginia and other states were having.
So after moving to Florida, you became a featured writer for the Orlando Advocate.
Yes.
With articles about police shootings, elderly abuse, garnering attention by the National Newspaper Publishers Association.
Yes.
What haven't you done? And something else that stuck out. In 2023, you were inducted into the Central Florida Association of Black Journalists Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Wow.
Get some claps around.
Hey, normally our engineer's on top of that. Hey, but you see our executive producer, he knows how to zoom in where he needs to zoom in at. But once again, thank you, and we're going to hear more about your book. But I'm going to pivot too. Doc, you and I were having a conversation, and it just hit us up close and personal that this is not something that happens in isolation. This, and you mentioned it earlier, happens to millions of people.
Yes.
And the importance of testing, we'll talk about that. But I got to say this. You've been a small business owner for the past 13 years, Orlando Podiatry Center. I get caught with that. And I've known you, it seems like a lifetime now. And when we were having the conversation, it just took me back home to where me and my siblings as adults, we would go see our grandmother who practically helped raise us. And all of a sudden, this woman who used to go tell us to go outside and get a switch. She didn't know who we were.
Yes.
And I mean, I got to tell you, it's not about but we were traumatized. And so as we talk about this, we want to kind of dig deeper. We also want to let people know where they can get help at, some of the things that we talked about earlier. as caretakers, we need treatment and counseling sometimes ourselves.
Yes,
Absolutely.
I can testify to
Absolutely.
that.
So what inspired you to write this book?
Well, I tell you, I started writing these stories about my mom. The working title was For Mama, for When She Forgets Who She Is. And the disease progressed so rapidly that we had to turn our attention to her quality of life, you know. And I just stopped writing altogether. And it became, after she passed away, which it'll be 2 years in July, it became For Mama Who Forgot Who She Was. I wanted this to inspire families and caregivers and people who may be suffering from early signs of dementia or even Alzheimer's to, take a look at themselves. Remember incidents in their lives. I infused as much humor as I could. I'm a big believer that laughter is
Good for the soul.
good for the soul, yes. And so I have a zillion stories. In fact, I'm sure I'm going to have another
And we're
volume.
gonna, yes.
But these particular stories I thought represented who my mother was in her entirety, and also kind of left little lessons for the reader about just how to navigate life in general, not necessarily with dementia or Alzheimer's, but just how to get through.
But when you talk about how to navigate,
Mhm.
Doc, I'm a lay person. You way up there because you have a better understanding. What were some of the red flags for you for your family member?
For myself, it wasn't just one individual. We've had multiple in the family. So the first time you kind of don't really know what you're looking for because you think it's not going to affect me or my family. But just the fact of seeing my grandmother put an electric kettle on the stove and then forgetting about it. But then we said, okay, this is not normal. We need to do something. And I think it's the family that will have to take a step back and remove themselves almost because your lens is different because you're the one watching it every day. So, just the constant reminders of things, maybe even forgetting to pay bills or where am I? Like kind of those things that you just think, okay, maybe you just had a moment, but it's consistent and constant. And, being the advocate for that family member, getting them tested, things like that, because it's not always 65.
Right.
I have an aunt that's 60 and is diagnosed with dementia. So we were able to get on it really fast and get the testing and things like that. But it's to have an advocate to help them get through that time because they don't know.
I can totally relate to what you just said because, as I was saying earlier, my mother was the youngest of 4 girls. All of them had dementia. There's one aunt surviving, but she still has, she's Alzheimer's. Her daughter at 70 or 71, I can't remember exactly how old she is, but she was just recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's, early signs. So yeah, and again, my mother was not the first that we saw in the family either, but it was my mom. And I was explaining earlier, my mom and dad were married very young. She had me at 16. We kind of grew up together. She was my best friend. So it was just devastating is the word. Devastating is the word. I think a little less devastation for me, if there's such a thing, because I am the only person in my entire family who lives in the state of Florida. Everyone else is in Virginia. And
It's all on
That's a
you.
lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
And but the thing is, they were there. They couldn't see because they were too up close on it. They couldn't see the progression the way that I could. I'm calling and talking to her 3 or 4 times a day. I'm visiting. I'm jumping on an airplane 2-3 times a month. There were stark differences that I picked up on that they did not pick up on.
But what about, and to both of you, what about the denial aspect that you just don't want to believe that this is happening?
Absolutely, you don't want to believe
Yeah.
that it's happening, especially to someone as viable and vibrant as my mom was. I write in the book about how she was the first female and Black African American female to be a treasurer at a high school in our school system back home in Portsmouth, Virginia. She was the first.
Wow.
She was numbers, money, addresses, dates, time, birthdays, directions, all of that. That was her wheelhouse. So back in 2005, and I wrote it in the preface about this. We went to the Essence Festival. My dad, my mom, my father wanted to see Bouncy, aka Beyonce. My mother was a huge Prince fan. And so they were both at the Essence Festival, and my parents never asked if they could go to the Essence Festival. That was the first time and last time. And we all went, my spouse, and we went and took in the shows. Frankie Beverly and Mays wore us all out, And so we were going back to the hotel, which was just right across the street from the casino and the Superdome. Walking distance, less than 5 minutes. So we go back to the hotel. My mom says, I'm going to the casino. And this was something that she enjoyed. Nobody, and again, this is a person who numbers, directions, I can't stress it enough. That was her thing. The next day at lunch, my mother admitted that she had been walking around all night trying to find her way back to the hotel.
Oh, no.
And even then, we just kind of blew it off. But I recall that it was of some concern, but we never connected it to dementia or Alzheimer's.
And I think when you physically see the person, they're awake, alert, they look normal.
Yes.
But inside of that brain, it's going through its changes, and they don't even know that it's happening.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
it's really difficult to watch that change right in front of your eyes. So.
And when you see it in person, it's like, wow. And then I was taking care of my mother-in-law, so I seen it firsthand, and I used to go tell my husband, how she did today, and he was like, that's not my mother.
Right.
I'm like, yes, that's where she's at now.
Yeah.
And it's just, you never know who you're going to get when I walk in that door.
True. Yes. And then the anger.
Yes.
They get very upset, especially if
Very combative.
Yes.
And they don't know. They don't
Yeah.
mean to say those things, or
Yes.
they don't know what's going on. But it's for us to understand, what's happening, and for us to be like, okay, let's just give them that space.
Yes.
But again, we have to accept that that's even going on.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Is that, I know it probably exists, but is there some special training, if you would, for family members so that you know how to address and support your loved one?
Absolutely. If I can jump in here, the Alzheimer's organization offers trainings, if you will. They give workshops, and most of your home health companies,
Okay.
your hospitals. We had people come in, even the social workers. They come in and they talk to us about it. I was on the business end of things when my mother started to really decline. And so I handled, all of the financial affairs. I made sure, that everything was in order. I coordinated her care from here. I coordinated her care, and then I kept my father and my siblings informed as to what was going on. But I also did talk I became known as the mean daughter from Florida. Because I kept it real. And my sister, God bless her, she's the first dedication. in this book because she gave my mother a mother's care.
Mm.
Whenever I went home, I had my hands on, and I thank God for that,
Yeah.
that I was able to touch her and give her some of that which she gave me and the rest of us growing up. But my sister was the one who full-fledged, and then she'll sit and tell you, I don't know nothing about banking and wills and all that stuff. That was on me, yeah. But as far as making sure my mother was dressed and bathed and fed and
Yeah.
medicated and what, and that her care providers were scheduled and all that, my sister was on it. I mean, she
Yeah.
was on it.
Yes.
And my brothers were kind of bringing up the rear, but quite honestly, I caught them on the times that I would go home to Virginia. And we'd all be there. I caught them looking so puzzled so many times because that was, again, I'm the oldest of five. That was their strong tower.
Right.
And they just had absolutely no clue as to who this was or what was going on.
Yes.
And I tried to explain, I tried to inform, I gave, websites and resources, and I think it just did not hit until the very end.
You know what?
So,
I want to hear an excerpt from the book, but for those of you who are watching this, you're watching the sit down. We have our two special guests with us. We have Ms. Sharon Fletcher Jones, and we also have Dr. Andrea Singh. And if you want to chime in, that phone number is 321-483-7002. And Ms. Sharon Fletcher Jones, please, we're ready.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm just going to share a little bit. It's a story I wrote. It's called Good Old Advice. And I'll just read the very end. My mother and father were remarried by two young ministers who they had mentored since they were teenagers and held in high esteem. The day came with bunches of white roses, a beautiful wedding cake, champagne toast, well wishes, singing and dancing with family and friends, expressions of love and gratitude, and lots of picture taking. It was sophisticated, it was elegant, it was beautiful. As evening approached and guests began to disperse and depart, my mother and father were caught holding on to each other and fighting sleep. When all the guests had gone, they found themselves separated, Mama with the girls and the boys with Daddy. While the men gathered in the main room of the club, Mama and her girls were holed up in the upstairs dressing room, chattering about what a wonderful day it had been. I remember praising my Mama for having put up with Daddy for so many years, 50 of them. My sweet sister thanked her for doing so and thereby affording us the wonderful lives we had had thus far. My sisters-in-law seemed to be in awe of the event of the day and how, as a family, we got through it. However, there was one question. Each of us, often struggling at various stages of our respective relationships, wanted to know how my parents managed to make it to this milestone, this 50th anniversary, and more specifically, we wanted to know, how did Mama do it? My youngest brother's wife deliberately asked, "What is your secret?" She begged my Mama to respond while the rest of us stood still in our tracks, waiting to hear the answer that would be the key to our own wedded bliss. You really want to know? Mama asked teasingly, and we waited. With bated breath, we coaxed while Mama hemmed and hawed her way around what was surely going to be the most definitive, life-changing answer to this burning question. After taking one last pause, Mama answered, "The secret is you have to cuss them out once a week."
You have to curse them out, huh?
You gotta cuss them out once a week. That's right. Give them one good cussing out a week. Even if they haven't done anything wrong, it keeps them on their toes, keeps them thinking. And besides, they're men. Give them a minute. They'll do or say something that warrants a good cussing out, and you will have already gotten it in. Trust me, it works. It's been working for me for 50 years. At that moment, we all burst into laughter. My dad yelled up the staircase, "Margaret, are you ready to go?" My mama replied, "Hell no. I'll let you know when I'm ready to go, damn it." To which my dad replied, "Yes, dear."
That's a good ending. Yes, dear. But that's a memory. That's a memory.
Mhm.
And I mentioned my grandmother telling us to go get switches. But what I didn't mention, and I'd like to hear some of the memories that we have on this panel, but we used to go from Miami, and lived in Miami, and used to have to go to St. Petersburg in the summer with my grandmother and my grandfather. Come from 5 siblings. One summer I intentionally left my church shoes in Miami. And because I didn't want to go to church. My grandma would make us go to church. I mean, not only did we go to church on Sunday, but it seemed like it was a job every day of the week. And so I figured, let me leave my church shoes, and maybe my grandmother would let me stay home with my granddaddy, or maybe I'll go to the gas station and work at the gas station.
She didn't forget that, though.
She made me wear tennis shoes. She made me but those are the kind of memories that I think about when we went to see my grandmother, and I went to lean down to hug her, and she did this.
That's
Yeah,
that's a hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
And
is a hurt
yeah.
feeling.
And so what are some of the
Yeah, I think for me, just medicine is, there's always a fix. There's a
Mhm.
cure.
Mhm.
This is one of the things that there is not.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right.
You can take medication to kind of slow the progression,
Mhm.
but once it's there,
Yeah.
it's there, and it will continue to
Yeah. Yeah.
change with time. So you literally watch your loved one just
Yes.
change right in
Yes.
front of you.
Mhm.
So you do the best you can. You try to get everything in order. Like you said, you kind of have one that kind of does if you have a team, your family, siblings, where one can do the kind of more medicine part of it. Maybe one can kind of do more of the financial part of it. But then the one thing that is really important, and we are kind of bad at that, is planning for the end.
Yeah.
And we leave that, and it's just a big mess that we can kind of help while they're there,
Mhm.
taking over legally
Mhm.
and getting estates in order and things in
Yes,
order, so
yes.
we're not so stressed out when that time
do
comes.
you think it's because we don't want to come to grips with the unfortunate reality?
I think that we're probably bad at that,
Yeah.
even in our own lives,
Yes.
that we don't
Yes.
plan even for ourselves. So how
Right.
can we kind of plan for someone else?
Mhm.
So
Speaking to that, I have a package that I use as part of my coaching, my life skills. And it's called What My Family Should Know.
Mhm.
It's a bunch of documents. I put them together. I got it from the internet.
Mhm.
And I started using that in my professional life
Mhm.
after what happened with my mom, because there wasn't a lot in place.
Mhm.
And the race and I say race, to get things together.
Mhm.
I remember meeting with the doctors, them talking to me about palliative care and hospice. And my father, me turning to my father and having to say to him, okay, we need to start planning for the end.
Mhm.
And I remember him looking like he was oblivious to what I was talking about.
Mhm.
And when I approached my sister, and I got there quicker than my brothers. And when I approached my brothers and said, we really need to, they were, oh, no, it's not time for that yet. They were in total denial.
Yeah.
And there's more that we can do. One of my brothers even convinced me to back up on the hospice care, because my mother showed this, what I call this burst of bliss.
Mhm.
But the intellectual person here, knew what was happening,
Mhm.
but the heart, I couldn't.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
really difficult. So
Yes.
this book should have been out a year ago, more than a year ago. But because I couldn't distinguish the depression and the grief and I wasn't dealing very well with it myself. So I sought the help of a therapist, because I knew that at some point I just knew I am a writer. This should not have taken me a year to get out of me. What was it that was holding me back? What was holding me back was that I had not dealt with my own depression and grief.
Let me ask this question.
Mhm.
When COVID took place, the African American community, our fear, was higher than I think anybody else, because there started to be some releases from the limited research that was available that COVID affected African American community far greater than any other community, and we're talking about diabetes and things of that nature. So is there any information as it relates to dementia and Alzheimer's? Because you mentioned earlier about the percentage of African Americans that are affected by this. Is it diet? Is it
Absolutely.
what
There are studies that suggest your diet, your stress levels, whether or not you exercise physically, exercise your brain. If you're engaged, there's some studies that suggest that if you're a person who lives alone and doesn't have a lot of human contact, that you may.
Hold up, wait, time out. I got 2 daughters. They stress me a lot. So what Doc, yo, what do I need to do? Because I mean, I ain't making light of this. Brianna, hey, stop stressing your daddy.
But yes, I mean that's what I've read, and that's, I mean, a lot of a lot of the studies pertain to other folks, not African Americans. And for that reason, that's another reason why I wrote the book, was to raise awareness and to have a vehicle through which I could encourage African Americans to take part in studies. Please, in fact, I'm taking part in a study beginning tomorrow with Clean Cloud. Yes. And there are lots. I've heard people say, well, I don't trust these studies done by non-African Americans. And I get that. We have a history, that's not so pretty. It's not so good. But there are enough African American professionals in the fields of neurology and in geriatrics and to deal with these things that we can take part in studies with them.
Y'all really got me thinking about the stress thing. My daughter just went to the prom, and you and my good friend, State Attorney Andrew Bain, have 2 daughters too. Y'all will get there one day. But stress, diet. What about all these memory? What is it? The memory products that are out there now that you can get over the counter.
So there's a lot of things that go on with when you have dementia. Most of the time you have other past medical history. You may have diabetes, high blood pressure, cholesterol, all these things. And you forget to take your meds.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
So you forget to take your insulin. You forget to take all of these things that will help, with the longevity. And that's the thing that we just don't really look at, because if the family member says, hey, yeah, I took my meds, like when I was talking to you on the phone, and with my aunt, I call her every morning, 7:00. Did you take your insulin? Okay, let's do it. So it got to the point now where I hear for the clicks. I know when she clicked it. I know when it's being injected because I can hear that. Okay, let's take your meds. Oh, well, I just took it. I said, no, check the container.
So you be listening.
Oh, yeah. I hear the gulp of water. So it's those type of things that you do have to have an advocate, because, and especially for this, it's like there's so many other depression comes with it. So many other physicians that you're going to need in their care that it's,
I don't want people to be overwhelmed at the prospect of having to care for someone who's suffering memory loss or some other brain injury, or because my mother's condition was exacerbated by stroke, actually. But I want them to be moved to develop that team now, not wait for the day of, or when you're in the midst of it, but get your team together now. Start looking at, for myself, I have what my family should know. I've been working on it, and I only have the one daughter. You have 2. They can share duties.
They'll take care of their mama. They probably say, okay, Daddy, we'll see you. But you're right, developing that team. But something else you said, Doc, when you mentioned you have your own superpower that I would call it, because you're listening for certain things taking place in the background.
And that developed with time, because
Yes,
it didn't happen like with the first with my grandmother. I didn't really know how to deal with it. And then as you kind of go on, and then with my aunt, she's so much younger than my grandmother when this happened. So you kind of know what to look out for. But even like developing that team, you still need to have your team on board. You
Yes,
still need to have your
yeah,
family
absolutely.
accept this. And
Absolutely. And something that you just made me remember. Recently, I found out, like this week, last week, I found out that hearing loss exacerbates dementia and Alzheimer's. So while we're going to get that blood work done and we're checking for diabetes and hypertension and the other things that we check for heart disease, especially with women, we need to also have our hearing checked. We need to get that quick little Q&A in from our primary care physician. If they're as astute as mine is, they need to give you that little Q&A to see what your memory loss status might be. But then you need to also have your hearing checked. These things should be standard, part of your standard annual checkups.
Well, I wish I would have had your book and the guidelines when I was taking care of my mother-in-law, because I was just, I wouldn't say thrown into it. I was put in that situation to help out. So I really didn't know what I'm doing, because I just go sit there with her and, make sure she didn't leave the house and all of that. And she said, "Why are you sitting here? I don't need you to sit in my house with me." And I'm like, uh-oh. And it was like, "Okay, Mom." I was like, "I'm fine. You go and do your thing." But as time went on, I can see where I needed to be there, because it was times where she had got out. And luckily, in the Popka area, everybody knew who she was. So when she got out, she would head straight to her church.
Okay.
That would be the place she would always go. So I knew when she got out where she was going, and I could see her walking down the street. I said, "Mom, come on, let me take you." And it was like, we have to do something to keep her in. So that's why it was always someone with her. They had got to that point.
This helps me to kind of, or not kind of, but reassess how important the senior social, you have senior exercise classes that take place. You got the progressive seniors in the Popka that meet on a regular basis. And we talked earlier about, think about individuals that are living by themselves that don't have that socialization.
Correct.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, there are studies that indicate that people in those situations who live alone and don't have a lot of interaction might be more susceptible. Yeah, I mean, it's. I had some familiarity, like you, Doctor. I had other members, my mother's sisters. I saw it, but it was from afar. It was from afar. And like you, I wasn't sure if what I was doing, I would call and check on my aunties. I wasn't sure what I was doing, but I felt deep within that doing something was better than nothing.
Going back to the planning aspect.
Yes. And you had mentioned something earlier about your brain and your memory. I found with her, I used to just give her rags, just to fold up the rags to see if she could, keep her hands, keep her mind busy. Just give her little things. And the last thing that I gave her, it was like, I don't want it. She threw it. And I'm like, okay, what do I do next? Yeah. So I wish I would have had the book or someone to guide me through what was going on, because it was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I just felt that way. But when the time came for her to transition, I felt it. It was like, oh my God, what am I going to do now?
I think as you talk to others, you'll hear how common it is and how how we have to deal with these
Yeah.
things in our family, and talking and, hearing these stories, you get a better understanding of it, how to cope with it,
Yes.
even ideas of what to do and things like that.
Yes.
Because it is very common, even for me in my practice, even though I treat my patients, they treat me as well. Every day we talk about what's going on inside of their families and their homes. And they'll tell me the same things that, same things that I'm dealing with right now, even with this dementia for my aunt right now. And they'll give me their stories, and sometimes, we'll laugh about it and, kind of, yeah, we have to deal with that too. Or, but just to know that you're not the only one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You are not.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, we're grown and we're having these conversations about how it's affecting us.
Mm-hmm.
But it makes me curious too. You have young children. What about the children that are seeing this and really don't understand what's going on?
Well, my kids are all over it. They said, "Did your aunt call you? Did you call your aunt?"
Don't you love that?
Oh, she must have forgot, mommy. They are very into it, and they know. So they're very aware. They're 6 and 7. So
But they're part of the team.
Yeah. Oh,
yes.
They are all the team.
Yes.
So when I go and because I do her medication, then I'll take the kids with me, and that's it. You could see she just brightens up with the little kids there, and they interact while I kind of do my thing. So it's they're definitely a part
That's
of it.
interesting.
that's
So
good.
children can actually. I mean, as I'm hearing you speak, I'm thinking children can be therapy.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
absolutely.
yes, they can.
When I'll say maybe 2.5 years prior to my mom's passing, my niece had babies, set of twins, and my mother didn't know who the niece was, but where are those babies?
Yeah.
Where are those babies? So
Man.
absolutely, yeah. I just think it's one, awareness. I don't know anyone in my circle or immediate circle, or as the pond gets bigger. I speak to a lot of people all day, every day, and I don't know anyone who isn't touched by this in some way, shape, or form. So,
Right.
and I think that if more people started talking, like you said, Doc, that we could really make an impact on early detection and treatment, and eventually prevention, and hopefully.
But here's a training manual right here.
Well, it's not. I don't want to give the impression that it's a training manual.
It's a help, though.
It is a help,
Yes.
and I do put the signs of dementia, early symptoms and signs.
Can you tell us what those are?
Just a few. Sure,
yes.
sure. It's mainly the main thing is memory loss that disrupts daily life. Because I have found my keys in the refrigerator. Okay, let's keep it real. I have found my keys in the refrigerator. Okay, and I've gone from one room to another and forgotten what I went in there for. Okay, we've all done that. But like you said, consistent,
Yes.
constant. That's what you have to kind of be tuned into. That these are the happenings that they're disrupting this person's daily life. Challenges in planning or solving problems, difficulty completing familiar tasks, confusion with time and place, spatial. My mother had a cup that she used for coffee every single day. The coffee inside of the cup was brown. That's how much she used that coffee cup. And one day she looked at that cup and said, "What is this?"
Oh.
That is,
Yeah.
okay, you got to pay attention. Withdrawal from work or social activities. My mother was a larger than life social butterfly. I talk about, there's a story in here about one of those incidents. But again, she started, no, I don't think I want to go this time. Just changes in mood and personality. Those are signs. And there is help. There is help. And I put that in here too. You can contact The Alzheimer's Association has a 24-hour helpline. May I give that
Oh,
number?
absolutely,
Oh, okay.
absolutely.
That number is 800-272-3900. It's just that simple. 800-272-3900. And you can also find help at their website, which is alz.org.
And we'll make sure we post that on the show's page as well. But these are the kind of conversations that not we haphazardly have, but these are the kind of conversations that we must have. I mean,
Yes.
you mentioned from a planning standpoint, you mentioned from a team standpoint. I will be the first to acknowledge. I probably will be in the crowd of denial, but denial doesn't help.
Right. Right.
So that's why we got to have these conversations.
Yeah.
That's true.
And it's important to, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. Because I'm thinking about those experiences that we all have. I mean,
Yes.
you listen to the panel.
Yes.
We've all had those experiences.
Yes. I can remember a woman that I befriended when I moved here back in 1998. Her name was Miss Emma. When I met Miss Emma, this is 1998, she was 75 years old. We got to be great friends. We worked together. And they asked me to host her 75th, or to host her birthday party. And at the birthday party, this was 5 or 6 years after we became friends. I said, "How old are you today, Miss Emma?" And she said, "Oh, I'm 75. And I thought to myself, okay, when we met, you said you were 75. So I made a joke out of it. I said, "So Miss Emma, what are you joining Walmart staff? You're rolling back your age like they roll back prices."
But for them,
But that was
Yes.
a sign.
Yes.
And I started talking to, this is before I ever got to Mama.
Yeah.
I started talking to her husband and saying, what if he went on a fishing trip, came home, and he had exotic fish in a tank. She'd fed them oatmeal instead of fish food.
Oh, wow.
But I started talking, not even naming it, not even knowing what to call it, but just saying, you need to keep an eye on her. You need to take her keys. I remember telling him when to take her keys and still not knowing what this was, dementia and Alzheimer's. So we do need to educate ourselves and just pay attention and know that, statistically, we're going to be on somebody's team or we're going to be the quarterback.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
You're right.
You're right.
Yeah.
Well, let me say this because there's never enough time to have this conversation. I want to thank our guests for joining us and having, this, to me, I think back to my grandmother and man, it brings back some memories. But as we bring this show to a close, and I want to kind of have you share your thoughts, and I want to close with our author, but everybody on this panel has had the experience of somebody that we love or a friend that has had this experience. And so, Doctor, I hear the different things that you use as cues to make sure that your aunt is getting done with her medication and things of that nature. But what would you leave our audience with in terms of what's one of the most important things that a person can look out for with somebody that's suffering from dementia, early stage or in the full-blown stage?
be supportive. You have to be their rock because you may see it as maybe they're lying or saying things that just don't make the most sense, but you know what's going on. So just be supportive, but do what you can as well, just because it's a lot. It is a lot. So just again, the support, because they're going to need that.
But
And you're going to need support.
You're right.
I was going to
And I
say,
think we leave ourselves like to the last.
Yeah.
But that's absolutely.
So accustomed to giving and being the rock,
Yes,
the rock needs support too.
that's true.
Yeah.
absolutely,
Thank
you.
you've got to employ some form of self-care.
Yeah.
It could be as simple as taking 5 minutes away from the situation. However you what's your best self-care for, you know what it is. That's the time to actually, to activate that self-care, because if you're not kept up, how can you help keep
You're
up
right.
Yes.
You're
the
right.
person
You're
that
right.
whose team you're on?
Yeah.
So
Is that airplane analogy? When you get on a plane, that you're accompanying somebody else, put your mask on first.
absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely. And a lot of people don't really know to do that. But yes, that is absolutely
So, Ms.
it.
Fletcher Jones, which would you leave our audience with? I mean, just something that just
Um,
is very important to you.
Faith without works
Mm.
is dead. I'm all about employing prayer, but I'm also all about
Yes.
practicing. And if you can't practice, get somebody who can practice.
Mhm.
Get those people who are knowledgeable. I'm the person, I don't mind saying, ooh, I don't know. Please tell me. I will
Yes.
raise my hand and ask a question. I don't care what it makes me sound like or look like. Ask the simplest questions. Ask all of the questions, but just make sure you are informed, well informed, and pay attention. And I love that you said advocate.
Yeah.
Be an advocate.
Yeah.
A lot of times we don't have people to advocate for us in these situations, and that's what's needed. You have to. If I can.
Oh, you can.
Oh, please, please.
Yeah, the book. Come on, man.
I have to say, for Mama who forgot who she was.
You got to do it. You got to do it. You got to hold that book. There you go. There you go.
For Mama Who Forgot Who She Was is available at Amazon. Please get it. A portion of the proceeds from the sale of this book will be given to the Alzheimer's Foundation for research and treatment.
Man, hey, thank you. Want to thank both of you for joining us. And the sit down is intended to be community driven. We want to bring to you information, what's taking place in communities, what services are available. And yes, this is something that we know about, but we don't talk enough about it.
Correct.
And so with that, I want to, thank my co-host, because again, going full circle, this affects everybody.
Yeah.
Ms. Wayne, appreciate your story. Hey, until next week on the sit down, want to thank our guests once again, Dr. Singh, Ms. Sharon Fletcher Jones. You know I love saying that whole name. But hey, really want to thank you too for coming and just really sharing your story, sharing your experience. And until next week on the sit down, we invite you to tune in and join us so that you can learn something about what's taking place, what it is that you might need. Till next week, we'll see you later. Thank you. Appreciate you.